Hello, my trigger-happy friends. My name is Stevie Cade, and thank you for joining me as I continue my journey reviewing all the Saw movies. Before we get started, if you could, hit that subscribe button and the little bell ding thing so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So grab your keyboards, head down to the comment section, and let's review Saw 4.
My work will continue.
The Jigsaw murders continue, even when Jigsaw is dead. This movie has a lot of really cool concepts to it, which is good and bad. But let's dive into what I like about this film first. Lieutenant Rigg being recruited by Jigsaw. That's what leads this story. And I think that's a really cool concept. Not just him, but the whole pipeline that he has of other potential Jigsaw replacements. It's a really smart way to continue the franchise and swap out characters every few movies or so. And the way they lay it out is in this domino effect that creates a connective tissue throughout all the films. Like Allston and Rigg had minor roles in Part 2 and Part 3, and now Rigg is the star of Part 4. Or Detective Matthews being the lead in Part 2 and having minor roles in 3 and 4. I really like all that connectiveness. It keeps me invested in the movie, kind of like a soap opera, which is, I guess, what movies are supposed to do, right? So good job with that. Detective Matthews himself. This poor son of a bitch. This character has lingered on in these films, and besides Jigsaw himself, is probably one of the more hashed out characters that we know. Donnie Wahlberg sells this role. He does such a great job, and I'm so glad he's in it because he was almost not in this movie due to a scheduling conflict, and so they had to write him out of it. And then he's like, "Hey, I'm available now," and they're like, "Cool. Get in here." But this movie made me feel bad that he wasn't able to kill himself. I was ready for it. I wanted him to die as a relief because Donnie Wahlberg sells the agony that this guy is going through. Like, you feel it. You want him just to move on.
There you go. Live or die. You make the choice.
Practical effects. The opening scene to this movie has a fantastic practical effect. I have some issues with this scene itself, but we'll dive into that a little later. But this practical effect is stellar. It has such great detail, and my hat goes off to the effects team for creating this thing. I believe this is a person laying on a table that they're cutting up. Like, it's so realistic. The effects department wanted to make this so gory, so it separated itself from TV shows like CSI that were on at the time that were using similar effects. So they went all in to separate themselves from that. That, coupled with the desaturated color palette and the oversaturated blood effect, just pow, it just popped right off the screen. And this movie it draws you in immediately with those practical effects. The trap where the husband and wife are held together via these metal rod things that are poking through their bodies. This trap or game or whatever you want to call it is exactly what Saw is. This is 100% a Saw thing. And that's due to the poetic justice that it has. You know, you have this abused wife who is tethered with her husband, and she has to make the choice. If she wants to live, she has to go through a lot of pain one more time at the result of killing her husband, who is the one who's been abusing her for years. That's beautiful. That's a poetic thing. This to me is exactly what Jigsaw's integrity is. The woman playing the wife, though, I found her to be really annoying. But that's whatever. The trap itself, perfect. Now, let's dive into what I'm on the fence about when it comes to this movie. The scene transitions, the little wipe screens that they do. This is a creative effect, segue from one scene to the next. But in this movie particularly, they overdo it, and it's a prime example of less is more. Take it down a notch so I'm more impressed with it when I do see it, rather than just bow, 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 bow. There it is. Every wipe scene has this unique transition. It becomes underwhelming and it's a little too, hey, look, did you see that? That was a cool transition. Another thing I'm on the fence when it comes to this movie is John's backstory. I do enjoy watching John's evolution, turning into Jigsaw, and how that came about. It was a good way to keep Tobin Bell in the movie because he's technically dead. So flashbacks, yay! The issue I have with this is that he's having too many hardships that made him Jigsaw. Like, I was pretty cool with the concept that cancer was the reason why he wanted people to value their lives. That was fine. And then in Part 3, we kind of dive into a backstory of, the love that was lost. Okay, now the love is lost, and there's a dead baby, and it's like, okay, all right, listen, we get it. John went through some shit, a little too much, which seems to be a consistent thing in this movie, because this movie is too much. So what's going to happen next? Saw 5, we learn about how the McDonald's employee got John's order wrong.
For years, you've been messing up my orders, but you've really been messing up your soul. The time is now. Time to choose. Will your life be for here or to go?
I can't believe I just did that. I'm also on the fence with the games being open, like, out in the public area. Like, it's nice to see that this world is bigger than just, a confined space like it has been in the past films, but I feel like there's just too many elements, too many unforeseen bystanders that could really throw a wrench into Jigsaw's master plans that he has here. Now, moving right along with what I don't like about this film, we have too many backstories going on. We have Rigg doing his game. We have the Detective Matthews storyline and his countdown. We have the entire Jigsaw backstory being thrown in here. We have Detective Peter Strahm and Perez following behind Rigg's every move. And then we have the Detective Hoffman storyline at the beginning of this movie, which brings me to the beginning of this movie. Movie starting with the end and not telling the audience. It was a confusing mess for me when they revealed it at the end that all this stuff is happening at one time. There was no real need to make this movie run parallel with the events that was happening in Saw 3. I don't think it added anything to the movie. Listen, I like twist endings as much as anybody else, but this didn't play out as good as I think they thought it would. They could have just kept the autopsy scene at the end of the film and voila! Surprise ending. It makes sense now. It didn't need to be at the beginning of the movie to make me think that this movie was a continuation of 3. I already thought it was a continuation after 3. So having that shock value at the end still would have hit home with me without deterring me and confusing the situation more by adding the last clip into the beginning of the movie. Heck, actually, I think the autopsy scene would have been a great mid-credit scene or an after-credit scene to add in. But I found this to be a cheap trick to get shock value, and it ended up being shockingly confusing. Now, here's some petty points that I have. First one being the dude at the beginning of the movie with his mouth sewn up. I feel like you can still talk or communicate something. I feel like you can murmur something out to let this guy know what's happening. And also the fact that you ripped those stitches open after you won the game. A little late to the party on that one, weren't you? Overall, this is a solid continuation from the other films. It flows pretty well, and it finally brings closure to Detective Matthews, but I found the movie to be bogged down by too many backstories, and a twist ending that didn't land. I would have liked to spend more time with Detective Hoffman and his backstory, so I was more shocked to find out that he was the one helping out Jigsaw. To me, that would have made the twist ending a lot more impactful, and for all these reasons, I'm giving this movie a C.
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
We're not in the bad section of these movies yet, which is cool. Now, after this one, I don't really remember what happens in what movie. So I got 5, 6, 7, right? And 8? Yeah, I got 4 more. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Also, be sure to check out some more of my videos. And as always, stay trigger happy, my friends. Peace.